Welcome back. Next up, we have Boosting Your Money Mojo with Lule Demase, president of Ally Invest, and Arian Simone, the general partner and co-founder of the Fearless Fund. Before I pass it over to our panelists, I want to remind viewers to put any and all questions in the chat box, and we'll answer as many of them as we can at the end of this segment. Hello, Lule and Arian.
Hello, Brian, our fearless moderator. Thank you for handing it off. I hope everybody enjoyed the session right before this, which was phenomenal, with our three financial experts around how they navigate their story, their money story, as they call it. Well, now I am excited to have the privilege of having a conversation with a woman who is on fire, and that's Arian Simone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Arian. And I will tell you, once I read this woman's bio to you, you're going to be anything about money that Arian talks about, we want to put our ear to the ground and listen to. So not only is Arian an accomplished person in PR and marketing and so many other things, but she's also now running a VC fund called the Fearless Fund. And I'm going to ask her to just give us a little bit of her bio. And then we're going to hear about something that she's done a book around and really talks expertly about, which is sort of how do you boost your money mojo? And that mojo is something that we're always trying to capture when it comes to the confidence that money takes as well, not just the planning and the deliberateness, but that confidence. And so we're going to have that conversation with Arian about her 7 principles around that. But why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, Arian?
Oh my gosh. First and foremost, thank you for having me. I'm honored to just share and experience this. And Lule, thank you for that introduction. I said, oh gosh, she's giving me way too much credit. I'm definitely going to share all of the wisdom that I have. But disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm here to definitely share the wisdom that I have. I am a general partner and co-founder, as she stated, at the Fearless Fund. And at our fund, we invest in women of color businesses, early stage, pre-seed, seed, and Series A. We love what we do because we were aware of all of the current and unfortunate racial disparities in the venture capital industry. Right now, Black women receive 0.0006% of venture funds, and women of color as a whole receive 0.06%. But we noticed it wasn't just a lack of diverse investments, it was a lack of diverse investors. The industry is 80% white male, and we knew we had to be on the other side of the table in order to affect change in that statistic. So that's what we do day to day. We currently run between a $25 to $30 million fund, investing in CPG companies, beauty and technology, food and beverage. It's truly a joy of mine because when I was in college, I owned and operated a mall-based retail store, and I raised capital for that store. And I was about 21. And I remember what that experience having to pitch and raise felt like. And there was nobody for me to pitch to who looked like me. And right before we opened up, I was sitting on the floor and I said, you know what, Arian, don't you even worry, because one day you're going to be the business investor you are looking for.
I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. Yeah. And that's part of it, right? You know, one of the things that we feel really strongly about at Ally Invest is, as we all become this amazing, rainbow family, as we've already been, but really as we embrace that, understanding that everybody has to come to the money conversation with that same mindset. So thank you for what you do. And we're looking forward to getting some of your pearls of wisdom when it comes to boosting our money mojo. So let's start out with first sort of your guiding principle, which I've read a lot about, and I've seen you when I follow you on social media. It's very important to you to center around checking our fear, right? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about why fearlessness and the checking of our fear is so important and central to the way you approach boosting our money mojo.
Because just like anything in life, what you focus on expands. So if you put the attention on fear, that's what's going to expand in your life. In my book, I talk about how people have this. The book is built on one premise, literally just one. And it's the fact that people have more fear in being broke than they do faith in having abundance. And it's just where they're directing their energy. I'm just a very big energy person. So if you understand what you focus on expands and you put your energy towards fear, then that's what's just going to be happening in your life. But you have to put your energy towards the fact that money is being printed every day. I haven't seen them stop, not in my lifetime, thank God, but it's plentiful. It's out there. It's available. And you have to believe that and you have to walk in that confidence.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting when people see you say that, they'll be like, well, you don't live in my shoes, right? I come from a place where my family did not have money. I don't have generational wealth. I didn't get a leg up. You're not saying this as a person who was given all the advantages in the world, right? So speak to our audience about that very premise that you're talking about, despite not having privileges.
That is true. Now, I want to first say there are plenty systemic issues in our society. I am not ruling out any of that. There are those things definitely do exist. I can tell you just a little bit more about my story. After college, closed the store, and I moved from Tallahassee, Florida to Los Angeles, California with what I thought was a job. I was working for Nellie's Apple Bottoms for about 30 days, like literally 30 days. I was doing product placement. I had placed product on Jessica Simpson, Tyra Banks, even Oprah Winfrey herself, the queen. And then she wore it on her talk show. And the president of the company said, "Oh, Arian, we'd like to meet with you." And I'm like, of course. And I go in there and they said, "We have some unfortunate news." And I'm thinking, like, I thought I was walking into like a promotion on spot. And they said, "No, we need to tell you something. The company's being sold and everybody has to go. You're just kind of like the last hired, first fired type thing." I was like, oh gosh. Well, at that time, my parents were in an unfortunate divorce case. They didn't have much to send me. And I said, you know what? I started running out of money. And I went from living out of my apartment to my car. But I knew that this was temporary. I did grow up middle class, but middle class is not like wealthy rich. So, of course, if things happen in the family, it can get very tight. So I said, oh, gosh, I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I have plenty of work ethic. I will have to figure this out. And I was without a place to stay for about 7 months. So what I can say, I gained a lot of these principles actually during that experience. I started practicing gratitude at a very high level. Pretty much I had my clothes in my car. And I would sell my clothes just so that I could eat and put gas in the car. And I said, Arian, you have to just be grateful for what you have. You know what is so wild? Even though I'm sitting here and this is not part of this discussion by any means, but I have my gratitude journal and I still write in this daily. I write down the things that I am grateful for. I don't care if it is a can of soup. I don't care if it is just the smile on my face. I don't care if it's my skin I'm grateful for today. I focus on gratitude because I understand that what you focus on expands. So I just became very grateful for what I did have just in that moment. I also practice what you visualize, you materialize during that time. I was in my car and I would ride around to all these beautiful homes in Beverly Hills and see all of these mansions and just people just living well. And I said, Arian, you know what? If they did it, you can do it too. And I allowed that to be encouragement in my life. So I believe what I visualize, I materialize. I also operate in another principle, which is you need to dance in the rain. Despite situation, despite circumstance, you don't let that dictate your emotions. You make sure that you have fun in life regardless. And while I was living out the car, I did something. I'm not encouraging anybody to do what I did because this is a little off, I guess you would say off kilter. So I snuck into the BET Awards. And that story is a longer story for another day because I want to stay on topic. But I snuck into the awards. You know what? I have to give a part of it though. So I get up. My friend said, I was sleeping on my girlfriend Purcell's floor at the time. I go from the car to sleeping on her floor. She's working for Apple Bottoms too. She gets laid off. Everybody's looking for shelters. Either way. I said, I'm going to the BET Awards. She says, you have tickets? I said, no. And she was just like, okay, how do you plan on doing this? I said, I'm gonna walk the red carpet like the celebrities. Fast version of this story. Me and my friend, we get down there. Somebody by the carpet says, hey, Arian. I'm like, oh my gosh, girl, that's our cue. That's our cue. So I don't remember who he was at the time, but I could tell by context clues of the discussion that, oh, we went to college together. Let me just keep playing this off. He said, yeah, I just signed with Usher. Either way, Usher shows up. We all jet off down the carpet. The paparazzi is like, who's the girl in the white dress? Who's the girl in the dress? I'm like, it's me. It's me. Like, I completely own the moment. We get in there, sit down in seats, and nobody moved us the entire show. But I tell that story. I don't believe in telling a story without giving basically the principle and the point. And I don't believe in giving the principle and point without telling the story. So my point behind that is this, that you need to act as if something is already done. Whatever your financial goals are, whatever your money goals are, you need to operate in the mindset that it's already yours. See, I thought that I was going to that award show when I got up and put on the makeup. I thought I was going to the award show when I put on that dress. I thought I was going to the award show when I got right in front of that gate area before the red carpet. I stayed focused on the goal until it manifested. And I believe that the world gets out of its way for people who know where they are going. So I operate in that and I stand on that. And I can get into more of that as even
absolutely
this fund.
And one of the reason I wanted you to sort of unpack your story is like, we fundamentally believe that the way people get closer to thinking that they too belong in the money story is seeing stories that they relate to.
Yeah.
And so thank you for opening up and telling those elements, because that's just as important as what we're going to do with the rest of the conversation, which is actually talk about some of the tips of the trade that you've perfected. But at the end of the day, it's like what Callie Cox of our investment team says. If you don't know your why, it's really hard to keep stuck to stick to tips and tools and tricks of the trade that people give you. And the why has to be there first and foremost. So thank you for sharing that why with us.
And I agree with that, Lule. Let me I tell entrepreneurs that all the time. And then when I speak and I hear stories and people sometimes may be down and somebody said, well, how do you get motivated? And I'm just like, oh, your why is not big enough. Because when your why is big enough, the motivation comes naturally. When we first set out to do this fund, we thought we were going to do this $5 million concept fund. Thank God that blew through the roof really quickly. But that was what we thought we were going to do. And the why, of course, is back to this promise that I made to myself, one, at 21, and two, the fact that we were going to have an impact on so many people who look like us. We knew that impact that we were having on our community. That why is big enough for when the days when it was a struggle, because at first it was, oh my gosh, people were like, are there enough women of color businesses? I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Fastest entrepreneur growing demographic there is. What are you talking about? They're like, oh, are they going to make money? I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. There was so much doubt. People said, oh, you'll never get institutional investors on your first fund. I said, you know what? You have to keep your fears to yourself because you can't project them on my life. So that may be what happened to you on your journey and venture, but it's not what's happening in mine. And having to stay rooted in that and having to stay rooted in that why. And honestly, staying rooted in why is just naturally. We know that our community is in need of this, and we know the impact that it's having on so many people, and we know that it is profitable. So that why is big enough to keep us going. So anytime I hear somebody where they're kind of like stuck, I'm like, oh, they may not have a big enough why. And that is key.
Yeah. And the big enough why is not always something that's ambitious and takes a lot of money. It just has to be the one that gets you out of bed and keeps you sustained all the time. And so, sometimes people confuse that big enough why to mean something that it has to change the world, right? It's the sustainability and the endurance of that why that we think is important, whether it's small Money Mojo moves or big ones. So let's shift to your book and some of the principles that you talk about. So you mentioned 7 principles around sort of boosting your Money Mojo. Give us a sense of what they are, some of the top ones, and a sense of to the audience of like, how do they incorporate that in their financial life?
Let me see where to start. Because I want to say I even started off by going through the fears. And I'm trying to think at the top of my head. I talk about the fear of people living paycheck to paycheck. I talk about the fear of people not trusting financial advisors. I go through the fears first before I apply the principles because I wanted to address the root of where everybody pretty much sat.
So let's back up and sort of identify some of the root cause fears that will help ground us as you shift into the principles.
Honestly, it starts with, I would say, what you've heard in your home. Nothing against anybody's parents. Nothing against anybody's parents. A lot of these fears happen because you heard parents say things of, oh, money doesn't grow on trees. Well, actually it does, because that's where the paper comes from. You've heard, it's true though. You've heard different cliches just throughout life. And because you've heard them through your upbringing, they now have become rooted in your system. I was reading this book. This is not to take away from my book, but I was reading this book recently called MetaHuman, and it's by Deepak Chopra. And he talks about they have a subset group of people, and they did not have like this trait, this obesity trait, right? But they took them into this room, they ran tests on them, they didn't have this trait, but then they were told that they did. And literally they went and ran blood work and all these things later after they were told that. And guess what? The trait ended up developing in their body just off of them hearing that. So that's how powerful of what you've heard is in your system. Mm-hmm. So I say that to say, that's why I want to say it's in chapter, because I'm like, Lord have mercy, chapter 1 or either the intro where we address all of those fears, because they're just deep rooted. We've all had them. I would say for myself personally, and I talk about in the book, we didn't talk about money too much in the household. I knew that I could earn a living if I put my mind to it by exercise my mother did when she took me to the car dealership. She said, she started walking around to the used cars. And I was just like, is she in the right place? And I said, Mom, I want the car over there, the red one with the spoiler and the rims. And she said, oh, wonderful, you can have it. I said, great. She said, because you're going to pay for it. And I was like, oh, but I rose to the occasion. I said, because I am. I just said it to her right there. I said, because I am. And I knew right then, I even got 2 jobs in high school. I knew right then I had the ability to go and make money. But either way, a lot of those fears start off in that space. Mm-hmm. They start off in that space. But that's why I like to talk about the fears first.
Yeah. Okay. So as much as our people love us, our families love us, there are elements that could clip our potential or our wings that we have to make sure we're watchful of.
Yeah, the principle of belief, I want to say that's number 1. So I want to start there only because it actually shapes everything else before. So it's like, I know we're on a time crunch. So if I hone in on that one, which is the only reason why chapter 1 is bigger than all the other chapters,
yep,
you're actually good to go. Of course, your thoughts and your words and all the other principles later on, but they're going to come from what you believe in and what you're grounded in. And the book opens up with my sorority sister we're in a drive-through actually. And she looks at me and says, you did it again. And I was just like, did what? She was like, it happened again, Erin. I was like, what happened? She was like, you said this morning by 4:00, you needed $10,000 more. She said, it happened. And I looked at her. Now I kind of get it because I see where she's coming from. But I operate in the spirit of, if that's what I believe, that's what's going to happen. So I said, well, of course. She said, your faith is unwavering. She said, it was mind blowing to her that this actually took place. I said, well, yeah, I believe. And it's so important that you believe. And it talks about this in the book and on the belief principle, that I was in a psychology class. I went back to school in 2009 just to get this education curriculum I was building under control. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to school and take some classes. And the class opened up like this. Mind you, we're in psychology class. She said, who all in here is going to do good on a math test? This is a big class, like 100 and some people. About 9 of us, me included, raise our hands. She said, because I'm thinking like, where's this come from? We're in psychology. Why is she asking us this? Who's going to do good on a math test? She said, that's who's going to do good on it. She said, you went into it with the mindset that you were going to do well on it. So that's why you're going to perform well on it. So when it comes to money, you have to go into it with the mindset that, 1, you're going to manage it well, that it's going to be yours. Because when you go into something with that mindset, then that's what's actually going to take place. So that's why I say the belief principle, being the first principle, is just so important.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, there's the sewing principle, there's the giving, there's all those other principles in the book. But if I start you off there, if we can get rid of the fears and we can start off with the belief, you're actually just good to go.
And tell the audience about what the title of your book is also.
Oh, The Fearless Money Mindset.
The Fearless Money Mindset. Great.
And my subtitle is Broke Doesn't Scare Me, but yeah.
Broke doesn't scare you. Okay. So I love this idea. You call it dancing in the rain. I call it, the term I use is, essentially a happy warrior, right? It's the idea like the battle doesn't scare you, right? Because it's the battle that teaches us, right? And so tell us a little bit about, now I'm going to flip the script on you a little, not trying to take you to a mindset that's negative, but, I don't want people to perceive that you've not had failures, right? So how do you navigate the lessons of failure and the wisdoms that it gives you? Because I think what you're preaching is not that life is without failure, right? Mm-hmm. It is about the navigation of investing in life and money without fear, which is a different thing. So tell us a little bit about a failure you might have had that you extracted a lesson out of, and what that lesson was.
Oh gosh, I'm like probably plenty. And then some of it we impose on ourselves. I'll even go right back to that store. I closed that store and went and got a job because I thought I wasn't succeeding at it. I constantly thought I was failing. We'd look up one day and I'm like, oh, we've got $50,000 up. We got -5. What the heck is going on? Yeah. So I thought I was failing. Now, there are times, that's what I mean by just self-imposed. As a mature woman, as a more mature woman, looking back at the financials, I just laugh because we weren't failing at all. It was just in my head that we were failing. I'm so used to achieving that a bad day was putting me in the mindset that we were failing. And I said, Arian, you weren't failing. You just weren't patient. This business, seriously, it was even profitable. Like, I was just like, now I can look back at it and laugh. So often failure is in the mind because you actually can pivot or make a change or alter something, and it can just become a success. So I gave up on something, which I have no regrets. It's part of my journey. But I gave up on something because I thought I was failing when I just wasn't being patient. So that's definitely a good lesson in that. But I can say just a simple quote that a lot of people even say. It's not about what happens in life. It's how you respond to it. That's what's going to, of course, determine your energy and your outcome. So when things just don't go your way, you have to just pick up and try it again. That's just what my great aunt just always taught me. She's like, baby, life happens. I say, okay, Aunt, I see. And she said, you just pick up and keep going. And I was like, okay. I remember a West African lady one day said, stress, what's that? And I said, what do you mean by stress? What's that? And she said, things just happen in life. She said, that's something your American culture has definitely taught you guys. She said, it's basically a non-effective coping mechanism. She was like, it's not solving anything. And I said, well, that is true. It's not solving anything. But yeah, I just choose to go through life with my days light and carefree, knowing that all is well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I hope people are putting in their questions in the chat, this wonderfully motivational entrepreneur and venture capitalists. And we're going to shift now, because I think we've extracted a lot of the essence of the wisdom of some of your Money Mojo elements. Now I'm going to get some of your expertise on something that I'm sure people are interested in, especially given what we went through in this pandemic, is the lens you've had as a venture capitalist who's focused in the market area that you're in, and how we've been hearing day in, day out, how, people of color and businesses of color have failed. And I want to understand through your eyes what you've seen in this pandemic, both the companies that you've supported and how you've seen small businesses come out and become, what potential that they have in navigating the ravaging effects of this pandemic. But before we do that, let's give a little bit of a 101 on VC. Tell us what venture capital does and what part of the capital markets does it play?
Okay. On a very basic, and this is actually, it's so funny, like this is what I thought the whole discussion was. And then when you started off with all of the mindset
You're
stuff,
too interesting, Ariane, to not talk about your story.
This is the most basic 101 elementary understanding that you can have of it, because I like for it to be just ABC simple. And I always use a Shark Tank example. Everybody pretty much has seen that. You are giving cash in exchange for ownership of somebody's business. That is the most elementary way that you can look at it. So on Shark Tank, you'll see, oh, I'd love for you to invest in our business. We're asking for $500,000 in exchange for 10% equity ownership in our business. That's what it looks like on a very basic elementary level. Now, I'm so glad you brought up the pandemic, because I have a lot to share about this discussion. The month that hit for March 2020, immediately over 41%, according to the New York Times and CBS, of Black businesses had to close their doors. It was heartbreaking. It was alarming. It was just distraught. Through the pandemic, through that time, over 50%, maybe even 60% by now, Black and brown businesses closed their doors. It's been ridiculous. It's been unfortunate. While this was going on, the dichotomy of what we were experiencing is that our portfolio companies were soaring. Everybody was having exponential growth. And I'm talking 3X, 4X. I was like, what is going on? And I said, you know what? The only thing different between the people we've invested in and the people that are having this polar opposite experience is that they have the access to capital, the strategic partnerships, and the resources. I said, this will be a true case study years down the line, just to show what happens when you give access to capital and resources to this demographic, that they don't just survive, that they actually thrive. And part of that reason is because that demographic is not used to having the capital. Their level of bootstrapping is just phenomenal. When they receive an investment, their cash burn rate is so low because they're such good stewards of the investment. They are agile, they're scrappy, they're frugal. I mean, I tell people all the time, if the only color you're looking at is green, you want to invest your money over here. Trust me. So that's what I could say about the pandemic and what I personally saw through my own eyes and what I was experiencing, because I was like, this is something else. I didn't plan on shouting out any of the portfolio companies, but honestly, they're the true rock stars. We're just behind the scenes doing the work. But this happened to be sitting on my desk right now, which is why I said, you know what, let me just tell this quick story. This is a Hairbrella. It's the Rain Hat Reinvents It. The founder is Tracy Pickett. She's in our portfolio. But she happens to go on Good Morning America, right at the height of the pandemic. This is the classic version. She takes this off and adds a face shield. Right then. That's what I mean by the level of innovation, scrappiness, agile, ability to pivot or create something in the moment and seize that moment. She had already done about, 7 figures in revenue, but that day she went from having 6-figure months to seeing some 6-figure days. So but she had access to capital in order to do that. And that's what I mean by just the effect of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of it, one of the things you said is sort of like it's the very fact that these communities are starved of access to capital is one of the reasons why you'll probably find high performing businesses and entrepreneurs in these spaces. So I found that so interesting in our prior conversation about here, like, it's the access, not the talent. The talent is completely under leveraged. So now let me ask you this. So a lot of our viewers are investors that partake in the traditional capital markets, right? Not necessarily, not everybody has access to venture capital, right? But even people who are in traditional capital markets, how can they affect a focus in society that promotes things like the way you do? In other words, effectuating change through expressing their dollars or other things that they do to partake in the kind of things that you're taking part in.
Of course. I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion can exist across the board. It doesn't have to be just in venture. And if you are that's like I said, I'm not a financial advisor, but people do advise that venture is usually only 5 to 10% of your portfolio anyway. So definitely be mindful in that aspect. But it's just raising that level of awareness to say, okay, where are my dollars going? Because sometimes people are just moving around and it's more so unconscious. It's like, oh, okay, I'm investing here, investing there. They're not thinking of, oh, where are opportunities to invest in people of color? Because it doesn't even have to be in venture. It can even be from angel investing. It can be on any level that you're just choosing to diversify your dollars in those ways. So I would say that it's more so having the conscious of it to say, wait a minute, let me evaluate my portfolio. And is this portfolio really affecting the overall demographics that exist in this country or in this world? And that can tell you right there automatically, like, okay, am I really making a difference here?
Yeah. So, Arian, let me shift the focus now as a person who invests in other companies, and you have an owner's mentality. I can tell even when you tell your stories from when you were younger, you're an owner in your mind, right? Tell us about why is it important for us, especially for folks that come from underrepresented communities, to be an investor, to think like an owner, even if you don't end up owning your own business.
Yes, exactly, because that is how we generate wealth. I tell people all the time, everybody's not called to be an entrepreneur. Somebody has to work for me. But everybody can be an owner. And I think for me, I think it's just so awesome. But everybody can be an owner. And even if it's just, you're starting off in the stock market, and everybody always says this basic, I guess, psychology behind it. You need to start off with things that you're using. So if you're using your iPhone, I have Apple stock. If you're using, you're going to a certain grocery store often, you may have their stock, that type of thing. You want to be an owner in the things that you are consuming. You want to have ownership in those things. And for me, I think it's so awesome because this is how everybody gains wealth. It's through ownership. So yes, to underprivileged communities, everybody can take part in owning something. And that is actually how I would say, equal a playing field. And what I mean by that is so many people try to fight for equality, but it's a fight for equity, because equality cannot even be discussed or be leveraged from a subservient position. You have to own something. So in order for us to get to equality, we actually have to be equitable. So you want to make sure that you have ownership in things.
Yep. Fantastic. And so I'm going to, part of the part that is really important that I often impart in people, investing is a personal thing. You got to understand what your particular situation is, whether it's your debt situation, your income, but ultimately the wisdom that we partake at our conferences and where we produce investment insights and thought leadership is that no one can afford to forfeit to partake in the capital markets, most especially those that need to want to be enfranchised. So we're so glad that you told us your story of how you partake in it. We are excited to see how you soar. I know we're going to have questions, but I just want to, first of all, thank you for joining me for such a riveting conversation. I literally wanted to keep on saying, preach, but I thought that might not be appropriate. So
Lulay, thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, what a pleasure. And you know what? I'm kind of glad I kind of pivoted you to tell us your story at the beginning, because I think it was so compelling and motivational. And that's part of the benefit of hearing your pearls of wisdom is your own personal story. So thank you so much for joining me. And I know that Brian has some questions, so I'm going to pause here and let some of the audience questions come to you as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this awesome discussion. And we have a boatload of questions. So I'm going to combine the first one. I have the 3 A's. Usernames all start with A's. They, in general, are centered around the basics of investing. First of all, Akeem asks, what is the name of your book? I would love to support. So that's your first question for Arian. And then, how do you find the best financial advisor, and how much money do you need to start investing? And I'll let you guys decide who would like to answer that question.
Okay. First, the book is called The Fearless Money Mindset by Arian Simone. It's available on Amazon, anywhere books are sold. The next question was, how do you find the right financial advisor for you, you need to talk to, the thing is with discussion of money, it just becomes so taboo because people don't talk about it enough as far as I'm concerned. But you need to start talking to people. You want to get a referral in this area because this is where people do have sometimes trust issues. So start speaking around, asking people who they're using as their financial advisors. And then from there, you just set up meetings and you just go and interview. But you want to get as many referrals as possible about the experience before you just go into that. So I'm very big on that being more of a warm lead versus just you're going through the yellow pages by any means. How much? That's all depending upon the person. Everybody has different risk levels. They just do. I know that there's even software that like helps you evaluate your risk levels. And out of like 100, I was like on an 80. I thought I was even more riskier than that, but they were like, no, you're like an 80. I'm like, okay, I get it. Because there is a certain level where I'm like, no, stop that. I'm not losing that. Like, I'm not risking that. So that's going to be dependent upon your risk levels. What I can say is over time, the market has been proven through decades to go on an upward trajectory. So over time, anywhere as low as 8% to 12%, when you're putting more money in the market. Lula, you want to weigh in on this? Because
I'd love
she's the investment president, okay?
No, I was enjoying your lessons too. But, I think there are three things I would say. One is, it doesn't actually matter how much you start with. It's more important that you start. And so, because what will happen is if you start, you will start eventually increasing your participation. So the first thing I would say is begin, whether that's a establishment of a brokerage account, which asks you for $0, or an establishment of a robo, which is an automated portfolio, which starts at a very minimal level, or whether it's to assess your risk profile, as Ariane was saying, which is very easy to do nowadays. And I would encourage you, whether it's ally.com, which all three of those exist on our website, which are really easy to navigate, or anywhere your, as Ariane says, your referral takes you. We feel really confident that, we are on the side of our customers and I really believe in education and knowledge. And so please visit us. But at the end of the day, the wisdom of your referrals is just as important. So thank you so much for that question.
All right. And then we have another question centered around investing. And then we got a couple of VC questions for you, Ariane. But to start with, Mallory says, if I don't have any debt, what's the smartest thing I can be doing with my money right now in terms of investing?
I'm going to let Lula take that.
First of all, what a blessing. I hope you wake up and do that thing that Ariane talks about. Get yourself a journal and start writing in your gratitude journal. That's wonderful that you're debt free. Now, that doesn't mean that debt in itself is a bad thing, right? Sometimes debt can help us extend our assets in ways that our rate of return could be good, right? So ultimately, debt in itself inherently is not a bad thing, but managing it and procuring it is really important. But congratulations that you were able to slay that dragon. So investing, as I said, is a very personal process. So you should first understand what your risk appetite is, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you have debt or not, if you are highly cautious versus being very aggressive in your investing. So you got to understand who you are. What is your psychology around investing? We typically encourage people when they are earlier in their life cycle to be more open to risk, because the reality is without risk, there's no reward. And that is true in the capital markets as well. And so the longer time horizon you have, the more you can afford to take on that. So again, in your case, because you don't have debt, that's something you might want to consider in your profile. And so once you figure out, okay, this is what I am, as Ariane said, I'm an 80. Okay, I'm not willing to take that kind of loss, but I'm an 80 or I'm a 70, and you determine that, then you can do two things. One is to start investing little by little in what you believe in or what you like or what you research, but also couple that with investments that are away from you. It's really important to try to pair both what we call your sort of play or speculative money that keeps you engaged intellectually, but also has you prudently diversified for the nest egg that's going to take care of your future. So, investing doesn't have to be unfun. And this is one of the things we often talk about. It's a fun exercise, but that doesn't mean you have to be imprudent. And so part of it is this combination of what interests you and a prudent, diversified portfolio, which come now at a very low fee, right? Our own portfolio, our robo, as they call it, the automated investing comes at management fee free, right? You don't even have to pay a management fee for it. The minimums are so low. So this is really an era and a time we're living in where capital markets are accessible to regular folk. And that is something we should definitely lean into.
All right. Well, we have another question from Jasmine. And Jasmine says, Arian, what steps did you take to start a VC fund? Can you describe what the journey was like for you overall?
Yes, I can. I wish it was that simple. But we run an SEC regulated business first and foremost. So you need to find a securities attorney if this is something that you have an interest in. I would recommend also having a more deep dive discussion. And if you are a person of color, I know there's very few of us out here right now. We're hoping for more, of course, and we're producing more. But feel free to even like DM me on IG. I have no problem with going more deeper into it. But your first steps are going to be, one, are you an accredited investor? And an accredited investor has $200,000 in salary continually or higher, a household of $300,000 or higher, or your liquid net worth is $1 million or higher. So that's first and foremost, you're an accredited investor. Second, you need to get a securities attorney. This is not always inexpensive. This is usually very expensive, to be truthful with you. And doing fund formation can get costly as well, too. So one thing I will tell you, that if you have a thesis, meaning you know what you desire for the fund to invest in, and you believe in this thesis, and it's a big enough cause for you to rally people behind it, you may want to get a few people on board. And then you use this, of course, capital to cover these expenses. Because I don't want you to approach it by looking at it like, oh, I have this interest to play in this space and it's so costly to enter. Get support and get help and get people who are like, I will take this journey with you. So therefore, you're not like, oh, gosh, I have to foot this bill by myself. But yes, a securities attorney is going to be your first step to get SEC regulated.
All right, Arian. Well, we're going to stay.
Were you about to speak?
No, I was just going to say, I think, you were talking about how having the right mindset and access to capital, but what you just said is also just as important. This idea of making sure you invest in your pack, right? You're widening the net of people that help you build as you go. So I love that answer. Thank you.
All right. So we're approaching the end of this Q&A session. So I think this will be the last question, and we'll keep with this theme about the VC funds. We have Make Up by Kenyon. How can we position ourselves within business to be able to apply/get funding by a VC such as the Fearless Fund? Do we apply via a website, or is there a more extensive process? And this will probably be our last question.
Yes, the answer is yes, you do apply via website. Our website is fearless.fund, F-U-N-D. And if you have any questions and you feel like you may not be as prepared as you think you should be, we have a program called Get Venture Ready, where we educate women of color entrepreneurs in the area of venture and entrepreneurship to make sure that they're prepared for the process. So if you apply and we see, we have to separate, of course, our applications of like who's venture ready, who's not. So we can then go on to who pitches to us and then go on to investing. That's kind of like the top funnel, just real high level. But when we see that people are not, we don't just leave you hanging there. We want to make sure that you have the education, the resources, and the tools to be able to go pitch to venture capitalists to go out and be successful in this space. So yes, you can apply on our website. And if you'd like to apply for Get Venture Ready, you can send us an email as well, too.
All right. Excellent. All right. So our next session is going to be the science behind investing. But before we get there, I would like to pass it back to Lule. She has something really fun to tell you about before we head into a short lunch break. Lule?
We do indeed. We do indeed. Continuing the theme of opening up the tent of inclusive wealth. I'm so excited to share. And I know, Arian, it's going to be something close to your heart as well, because I know you're a graduate of a historically Black college. You can shout out if you want. I know you can.
Of course. If I want, I have to. I'm a proud graduate of Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, also known as FAMU to many.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So, what we did at Ally Invest is we actually launched our first investment challenge. It's a simulated investment challenge, and we made sure that this was an attempt to try to bring, again, that mindset of ownership, investing, and partaking in the capital markets to students who don't necessarily have that at their dinner tables. And so, we had a participation of brown and black participants from different historically Black colleges and other partnerships. That was incredible. And it was our first contest. And what did we have? And I got a chance to talk to the winners of the contest. And so we got a few minutes of an overview of that conversation. So stick around to watch it. It was really inspirational. And thank you again, Ariane, for such an inspirational conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited you could join us today. Congratulations on winning the first place position for Ally Invest's first stock market investing competition. I want to first start off with you telling a little bit about yourself. So give the audience, what's your names, what schools do you go to, what are you doing right now? Let's start off with, let's do a little bit of the Hollywood scare mix. Emmanuel, why don't you get started off?
Thank you so much, Lule. My name is Emmanuel Perez. I'm a recent graduate from Norfolk State University. I majored in business management and information systems, and I found out about the competition from Mr. Deshaun S. Spellman from the Thurgood Marshall College Fund.
That's awesome. And Emmanuel, I promise you did not win because of your voice, which is awesome. Okay, let's go to Dom. Dominic, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I don't have such a distinctive voice as my friend Emmanuel over there, but I'm Dominique Spence. I'm from Alabama A&M. I'm currently majoring in management, and I graduate in December. And I found out through the competition the same way Emmanuel did through Deshaun. So we all kind of came here from the same place.
That's awesome. And Kyle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, my name is Kyle Jacobs. I'm a senior now. I'm an agriculture major at Virginia State University. And I found out about the competition through the Thurgood Marshall College Foundation through Deshaun Spellman when I was participating in another competition. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And Miss Bettina, why don't you tell us who you are and what part you played here?
Yes, I was their coach, and I actually am a senior analyst with Diller Financial Services, and they were just so much fun to work with. And I've been here at Ally for 4 years.
You were a fantastic coach, and we'll talk a little bit about what the coach role was as well in this. I know we're missing one of your teammates. Can you tell us a little bit about them so they can get a shout out?
Khalid actually is from Brooklyn College. He's in a master's program in data and analytics there.
Brooklyn in the house.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. So congratulations, folks. Now, before we actually talk about your experience, I want to give the audience a little bit of what this program is about. So this was done, it's a contest that's trying to do what at Ally Invest we do every day, which is to try to expand the opportunity of engagement in investing and the importance of engaging in the capital markets for a wider set of individuals. So we did this in collaboration with Better Investing, the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and the Association for Latino Professionals for America. It is really amazing that we had over 42 participants, and they were so compelling in both the way that they told their investment thesis, how well they partook in it, and just as importantly, how well they told the story of their investment journey. So the participants really completed an online simulation program with a global capital markets sort of access. It's simulated, and it was provided by SIFMA Foundation to test their investment skills. In addition, the experts at Better Investing also shared stock market lessons during the weekly lessons, which was really valuable. And the program really culminated into 10 teams that presented their investment thesis to complete for the first, second, and third place. And we actually also recognized MVPs because there was just so much plenty talent in the competition. In addition, the participants will receive a funded trading account at Ally Invest Securities, which is a member of FINRA and SIPC. And so we're going to begin the process of partaking a lifetime's journey of engaging in the capital markets. So hopefully we have, as I often say, we've helped them catch the bug of investing. So, and this group won the whole kit and caboodle. And what's so fascinating about this group is that actually there were components that were about rate of return. The contest only lasted 10 weeks, right? Rate of return, but there was also sort of like, what's your investment thesis? What does investing mean to you? How do you engage in it as a lifetime sort of practice? And so all these things were a component, not just rate of return for the contest. So with that, they actually were not necessarily one of the top ones from a rate of return perspective, but their investment thesis and their intentional way of approaching it was really compelling. And so they won the whole thing. So congratulations, guys. So let's start first with your coach. Let's get a story from your perspective. When you first inherited this team and sort of thought to yourself, okay, how do I set up a team that's going to be successful in this contest? What are some of the things you had in mind?
Starting out, it was, and this is with anyone that I work with, I always want to know what their expectations are. And so leading with that, I asked them, what are your expectations of me? And I will give you the quote Emmanuel gave me because I thought it was hilarious. He was like, hey, what we need you to do is keep us focused, make sure that you bring to our attention things that we're not aware of, and, essentially be their Phil Jackson when going for their 3P. And that's what he said. So, and that was my role throughout this competition, was to keep them focused, help them with things that they may not be aware of, and just making sure, and most importantly, making sure that this is a lifetime commitment that we're making to one another, that this was about them being the change they want to see in their family and closing the wealth gap, that, contributing to that part of it. So that was always our main focus, not just winning the competition, but winning in life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a great coach right there. Most coaches are good lifetime coaches, not just about the techniques of the game you're playing. So thank you for providing that guidance to them. Since you mentioned him, I'll start off with Emmanuel. Emmanuel, when you approached this, what were the places you thought, oh my God, I got to bone up on my bona fides when it comes to investing and learn? And what did you think, oh my God, I'm going to lean into some strengths that I already have in this space? Give us a little bit of that.
Sure. Starting off with my weaknesses, I think looking at a company's financials were something I tried to avoid in the past. But thanks to the team at Better Investing, and thank you to Ione McNeil, who showed us how to look at a company's balance sheet and look at charting. Some of those tools really helped, not just in the competition, but also in future investing.
That's awesome. And then what were some of the strengths that you felt to yourself, okay, I didn't know I was good at this, and you affirmed that in this contest?
I think bringing the team together, just getting to ask specific questions about, what's your favorite stock or what's your favorite ETF. And I think really just being a team player.
Yeah. And you did something phenomenal in this contest, which is also bring in your story, right? And so many of the stories of who's in this contest. Now, if I'm sure for our audience, which is a seeing audience, this is it's not the typical faces of investors that we see, right? And one of the missions of this contest was to bring in more Black and Brown voices and people investing, so we can tell people like this is a place to be for widening that tent. So you did something really special, which is also tell us why investing was going to be important in your personal life. Are you comfortable to share a little bit of that with the audience to understand what are you walking away out of this in terms of not just the skills of investing, but what it could mean to your personal life?
I think in terms of my personal life, one of my goals for investing is the FIRE movement, the financially independent and retiring early. I think that's absolutely awesome. And I think this competition has equipped me with those skills to be able to achieve that goal in less than 20 years. Just looking at the time value of money and delaying gratification that way. If I save my paycheck every month and take a portion of that saved amount and investing it and having it compound every 2 weeks and letting that roll and not, looking at the market every minute. Things of that nature, I think will help me achieve my goal.
Discipline, right? Sticking to it and the discipline of that. So Dom, let me switch over to you now. Tell us a little bit about how you approach this from like an investment perspective, what you learned, what techniques you learned out of this, some things that have stood out to you, and how you personally approached it to find success.
So I guess I'll open up with my strengths and weaknesses. For the most part, I think my weaknesses were my inability to kind of, catch the wave of really like being up to date on news, or really to, the financials, like Emmanuel stated, and really using that knowledge to maybe be on the right side of a trade. Because actually, we were amongst the only teams that actually shorted different stocks and whatnot. And you really need a lot more information and a lot of know-how to really be comfortable shorting in the stock market, at least. And so those were kind of like my weaknesses of just not really having that much knowledge. But after going through the 10-week program, I have a lot more knowledge now than I began. And so my strengths is I came into the competition with a little bit of knowledge in trading using different fib ratios, of those kind of technical skills. And so I was trying to use those skills to actually pinpoint a good entry point of a specific trade. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. The stock market, it goes up, it goes down. And so we have a few trades where it kind of worked out, and I leveraged my team to make that final call after I put those technical skills to use on if we entered a trade or exited one.
Yeah. Some of the best lessons I've learned as an investor is actually when things go south, not north, because it forces you to do the diagnostic around it. So that's a great insight. Tell us a little bit about you as well in terms of how does this inform your personal story going forward or past?
So I've always looked at investing and trading as one of those gatekeeper skills that people of Archon and color have generationally not been able to have access to. And that is always really breaking my heart and kind of broken down my spirit a little bit to know that, my mother, my father, their mother, their father, their mother, their father, they didn't have those skills and didn't even have the knowledge of those. And so when I have an opportunity such as this program, such as a company as Ally to be able to host this, I have to jump on it and really learn what others haven't learned to maybe get an edge at the end of the day. And my future, my children can say that their father and, my wife at the end of the day, she'll learn from me as well, or she'll already have some knowledge and, their mother, their father will have those skills. And then we can start building that generational wealth.
Yeah.
And it may, start small, but just to say that it meant so much to me.
Absolutely. Amen to that. So Kyle, I'm going to shift to you and talk about the fun side of the equation, which is what did you find to be actually entertaining and fun about the investment process?
The stock market is really unpredictable, to be honest. Especially with COVID. I think the funnest part was kind of, working with other that were my age and kind of seeing their investment strategies, because a lot of the times, there's not a lot of people around us that invest. So just working with them, collaborating with the coaches, and just seeing, if our investment strategy is actually working. I think that was the funnest part of the class.
Did you guys debate a lot?
Yeah, we debated on a few different stocks and a few different methods, but at the bottom line of it, we all had respect for each other. So if somebody recommended something, then we all just kind of took a look at it, analyzed it, and we provided our responses appropriately. So if we didn't think the stock was going to perform well, then we provided a reason why it wasn't going to perform well. But the person wanted to stick with it, then we still chose the stock. So yes.
So you saw this as a team sport in terms of you all brought some individual skills, but you approached it as a team sport.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what was a high moment for you in this contest.
I think the high
beyond
moment
the presentation and winning. No, I get that.
Okay. The high moment. That's an interesting question. The high moment, besides winning, was just understanding everybody else's investment strategy. Investing in something that's really personal, and when we invest, we make a decision. We think we have the best decision, but seeing other people's investment strategy and their plans, and choosing some of the stocks to put into my own portfolio, I think that was the best part, because I was kind of monitoring who had the best stocks and which ones were performing the best, and kind of added that to my own personal portfolio, and it's done pretty well. So I think that's my favorite.
Emmanuel, tell us about a holding that you had that you fell in love a little too long with, that you didn't divest out of, if you had one. Did you have one like that?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
A holding that you feel like, I held on too long. I had emotional attachment to it more than I had a rational attachment. Did you have that experience?
I did have that experience, actually, with a couple of ETFs that I picked. They didn't perform so well, and like Dom said, just collaborating with the team and getting others' perspectives on where to hold or drop it. was key. And we had a very limited time horizon too.
Mhm.
So that was something we kept as a factor.
Yeah. Yeah. You're basically compressing, the skills that one applies for a lifetime in 10 weeks. So that's definitely an artificial construct. Yeah. And then for you, Dom, tell us a little bit about something actually that was either doing well or not doing well, but you thought, you know what, I sold it at the wrong time. I've missed that arc for the ride. And what did you get out of that?
So there's probably two, and I know the team knows exactly what I'm talking about. The first one is going to be AMC, and then the second one was more on. I want to say we shorted SunPower, and before then they were on a downtrend, and we just felt like they were just going to keep going down. But we just hit them right on the curve, and so it was just a bad time. But
Yeah.
AMC, as you all know, we
Yeah.
shorted them the very day they jumped from I want to say $12 back up to like 18 the very
Yeah.
day. And so we switched into a long strategy and rode that long up until I want to say about 25 to 27. Got out and said, "Hey, I think they closed below where they opened." So I thought, okay, a red candlestick. Let me short it again.
Yeah.
Worst decision to say the least, because they jumped up again, and that's
Yeah.
when we hit astronomical numbers around 50. And so that was a time to where it just went totally.
Yeah, the market is a really interesting place, right? Where you have people who have like a valuation lens towards investing, but then there's a speculative lens, and then there's folks who are, the art of speculation, which is sort of the students of momentum. And it's kind of like it depends which wind you catch sometimes when you're in those kinds of situations. Yeah. So I want to ask each of you this question. And actually, I'm going to ask this of your coach as well, because one of the mantras for this contest is that we lift as we rise, right? Our sincere hope is that, as I said, you've got the bug of investing now for a lifetime and you practice that art through the downs and the lows. But once you've practiced that art and you have it, it is also a turnaround and give scenario, right? Tell us a little bit about it, and I'll start with your coach first so you guys can think through your answers. What's your lift as I rise out of this experience that you'll pass on? So, Coach, why don't you start us off, because I'm sure you've already have a lifetime of doing that as well. So give us a little bit of sense.
Absolutely. My lift as I rise would be that this is a lifetime commitment, not just something that's short term, doing it in spurts. You fall down, you get back up, and you keep going. You learn from it, you dissect, you break it down. What does it mean, and how could I improve? So that it's a lifetime commitment. You just keep going.
Yeah. And just in coaching them, that's part of your lifting equation, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Awesome. It was so awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So, Dom, let's move to you now. What is your lift as you rise takeaway out of this contest or the broader few months that you've had with Ally?
I think this competition has gave me a broader view of how I will invest in the future. When it comes to lifting as I rise, I look at the individuals on this call right now, and to be able to be at the lowest point of not winning at this competition or not being in the front of a trade, and to where the team came in and said, "Dom, we're going to still try to win this competition regardless," is how I will take that into my investing journey for the rest of my life. I'm not going to do this alone. I'm going to do this with friends and family. We're all going to invest and build that generational wealth together and lift each other up. So if somebody may stumble, we'll be there to pick them up. And so that's how I'll lift as I rise.
That's awesome. Okay, so Kyle, why don't we move to you? What's going to be your give back as you rise out of this?
Well, actually, my lift as I rise. So I spent a few years in the foster care system, and it's extremely hard for foster care kids to build generational wealth, especially we don't have families, and the services don't quite provide investment strategies. So my plan is to actually create some type of challenge or service, and maybe even partner with Ally Financial Services to create a competition for foster care kids to be able to build some generational wealth. And I'm working on a data science project with UVA in Loudoun County, and they're looking for services or things that foster care kids can do to kind of get them started on investing. So I'm going to complete this project and get my research published, and then hopefully take this momentum and create a few programs to help foster care kids build wealth.
Thank you so much, Kyle. That's awesome, and we are there right there with you, cheering you on and supporting you as you rise. And so let's finish it off with Emmanuel. Tell us a little bit about what your lift as you rise story will be.
For my personal background, My mother, she came on the lower end side of the economic mobility spectrum, and just seeing her and seeing how hard she worked, and not having the knowledge to really invest and save for her future and our future. I think it's up to me now to do that for not only myself but my community and my friends and my colleagues and my family. So I believe just spreading the knowledge as I learn. I do it now, and I want to do it on an even greater scale as I continue to learn more.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for partaking and giving so much of your precious time to this contest. I hope it left you, if not necessarily the indelible skills for a lifetime, a part of it. And it really has caught a bug for you to be making sure that engagement in the capital markets and what that brings to your life is something that's additive to the mission that you have. You're amazing, amazing young talent that's growing. And I'm so excited to be seeing you all rise as you lift others and you become grown men in your own rights. So I'm so excited to be part of that story. We thank you at Ally for partaking in this. And for the audience, this is our mission, right? To make sure that people understand that partaking in the capital markets and widening that tent of who partakes is part of bending that curve to the arc of justice. So thank you so much for joining us, and for congratulations again for winning.